The Walt Disney Company and Lucasfilm's Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny goes down after just 4 days at the box office to newcomer The Sound of Freedom, starring Jim Caviesel from Angel Studios, an upstart that has no business taking on a $300+ million production blockbuster from the Walt Disney Company, but it did nonetheless. You gotta imagine right now that the folks at Disney and Lucasfilm are in a pure panic mode, trying to figure out what happened, as if they didn't already know. Let's get into it. Renegade Online. Well, folks, welcome back. Another great day here at Valiant Renegade. It's good to see everybody out there once again. And if you are like one of the many folks watching this video, not yet subscribed to this channel, please take a moment and turn that little red subscribe button to gray. Hit that like button, hit that notification bell, share this sucker out on the social medias, and of course, please do leave a comment before you head out the door today. Now, you probably saw us cover this one on Sunday in the video and on the live show right here on Valiant Renegade. Let's get everybody caught up. Indiana Jones and the Box Office of Doom, why the Dial of Destiny at $60 million opening isn't setting records for the franchise finale. Now, one of the things that I had projected early on was that Indiana Jones, given its enormous stoppages, production budgets, overruns, reshoots, was going to come in north of $300 million, probably to the tune of $350 million. Now, since then, this article has been updated from Sunday. How could Disney and Lucasfilm mess this up? Yesterday, Anthony D'Alessandro learned from a key source that Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, before a $100 million in estimated prints and ads, which again is incredibly low, and we speculated that it looked as if after the Cannes Film Festival premiere and the poor audience reception, that Disney looked to have almost positively pulled back on the marketing budget from this movie, and that seems to play into some of the rumors where there was a blame game going on between Lucasfilm and Kathleen Kennedy blaming the marketing department, and the marketing department, of course, pointing the finger right back, blaming Lucasfilm and Kathleen Kennedy for just making a bad movie. But now the article reads that this film cost a mind-boggling $300 million plus, much higher than the $250 to $295 that's been leaked out there. Well, $300 million isn't that much higher than $295, is it, Anthony? Well, that's because on Sunday, when this article was initially published, that $300+ million figure actually said, I believe, $330+ million. Something's happened since then. I think the thing is actually more expensive than $330. And just as we've seen many times recently from Forbes magazine detailing that the actual spends the Walt Disney Company makes on making these films is quite a bit higher than the stated budgets, well, I think the same here is true for the Indiana Jones and Dial of Destiny film, but it's probably going to be almost another year before Forbes is able to confirm that through the UK tax returns that go along with the company that produced this film. We actually recently just got some wild news updating what Disney actually spent to finish Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Stay tuned for that video. It's coming up soon. Disney has no control over these budgets, and it's become a serious problem financially for this company in terms of their theatrical distribution wing. On July 4th, Independence Day here in the U.S., Anthony D'Alessandro was out trying to make final predictions of what the opening 5-day run, which would include Monday and Tuesday of a long extended 5-day holiday weekend here in the U.S., as many places, businesses, government operations, things of that nature were closed on Monday as well as Tuesday. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny's $82 million plus 5-day total, not far from 4th of July disaster, Superman Returns. Ouch. And this is where Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is domestically through July 4th. Now, the international box office is missing that Monday and Tuesday, but I promise you it's probably not all that impressive. Domestic box office currently stands at Indiana Jones $83.8 million. That would have been even a terrible opening 3-day weekend for this film, but this is what it's made after 5 days. But don't worry, the story actually gets worse. Because on Tuesday, after just 4 days in the box office, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny went down to The Sound of Freedom from Angel Studios, an independent studio with a very small budget film that racked in $14+ million on its opening day, and Indiana Jones pulled in 11.69. But what's truly embarrassing is that happened with Indiana Jones in 4,600 screens across the U.S. and Canada, and only 2,600 screens or so for The Sound of Freedom. That's right. If you look at the per theater averages there, $2,543 per theater average on the day on Tuesday, July 4th for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, and $5,400 for The Sound of Freedom per average screen for that day as well. So The Sound of Freedom didn't just beat Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny on Tuesday by $3 million or so. It actually beat it nearly 2-to-1 when you consider how many screens The Sound of Freedom had available to it compared to Indiana Jones. 2,500 versus 4,600. These kind of numbers shouldn't happen. Not after 4 days of a major tentpole blockbuster from the Walt Disney Company. There should have been no chance that Indiana Jones would have been knocked off the top of the mountain until Tom Cruise shows up next Wednesday with Mission Impossible 7: Dead Reckoning Part 1. But yet, it happened nonetheless, and that's where we are. Now, even in places like Variety magazine, the excuse-making seems to be getting a little thin. This from just yesterday, Disney's harsh new reality, costly film flops, creative struggles, and a shrinking global box office. Yeah, I don't know about the whole shrinking global box office. I mean, there are certainly some arguments that can be made to that end. But the problem is that every now and again we get major blockbusters peppered in from other studios not named Disney that seem to do exceptionally well. Look at Spider-Man No Way Home from Sony. Look at Avatar 2. Granted, that was distributed by Disney, but it was made by James Cameron. Disney was blessed enough to acquire the distribution rights and the Fox deal for that one. And then, of course, there's big ones like the Super Mario Brothers, Minions Rise of Gru, those from Universal and Illumination Studios. There's plenty of other ones out there doing very, very well. Why can't Disney pick up any of that business? Variety claims that barring a miracle or a sudden surge of interest in all things Haunted Mansion, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 looks like it will be the studio's biggest earner of the year with $835 million. And funny enough, shortly after Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 began to leg out after its second and third week in theaters, I speculated the same thing a few months ago, that it would probably be the biggest film that Disney has in theaters this year. And when you consider the other major IP tentpoles they have put out, quite frankly, that's sad. This is the first time since 2014, except for the pandemic-stricken years of 20 and 21, that Disney won't have a movie that reaches $1 billion at the global retail box office. It also marks a shift from 2022, which saw the studio release not only hits like Black Panther: Wakanda Forever and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, largely thanks to Spider-Man No Way Home, I might add, but also Avatar: The Way of Water, which they didn't make, the third highest grossing film in history. Even if that's the case, Disney still far outranks the competition in terms of market share in 2023, commanding 37% of the industry's revenues. Universal is close behind at 31%. But ticket sales for the films it has produced have been more earthbound, especially compared to the pre-COVID years, when Disney fielded a record 7 movies that crossed the billion-dollar mark in 2019. In many cases, reviews for recent releases haven't been standout, with critics being particularly scathing about Quantumania and openly questioning the need for a 5th Indiana Jones adventure. But this article, like so many others, points out the fact that, well, Disney has the biggest market share in the theaters right now domestically. Gosh darn it, that's just wonderful. Yeah, it does not matter one single bit if you're losing hundreds of millions of dollars. 37% market share sounds great. Hell, they could finish the year with 50 or 60% market share. It doesn't matter to me. Did you actually turn a profit, or did you lose $500 million or more? And at this point, it's erring to the side of more. Much, much more. Unless, of course, as the article stipulates, that the Haunted Mansion is going to be a breakout success. But don't worry, folks. The Marvels comes later this year. Ugh. So it looks as though, for right now, that Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is going nowhere. It's got about a week left before Tom Cruise shows up with Mission Impossible 7: Dead Reckoning Part 1, and that's going to be all she wrote, I think. This weekend, Indiana Jones will still have the advantage of premium large format screens and IMAX screens, something that Angel Studios' The Sound of Freedom still won't even be able to enjoy, and it might still beat Indy 5. See, the interesting thing coming up this weekend is that with Angel Studios' film Sound of Freedom performing as well as it has, and with the fact that Insidious 5, The Red Door, a very popular horror movie franchise, is also releasing this weekend, and it too will not have the advantage, like Sound of Freedom, of any PLF or IMAX screens. Yet a lot of the places out there like Deadline, THR, Variety, well, they're projecting we could have a three-way fight here for the top spot this coming weekend. And if Indiana Jones can't even hold the top spot in its second weekend with such minor competition in terms of production and marketing, that is a serious problem for the Walt Disney Company on top of everything else they've been dealing with. As of right now, Insidious, The Red Door, and Indiana Jones are both projected to squirrel up about $25 million in their second weekends. And I think that The Sound of Freedom could get in there as well. It'll be interesting to see. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny could wind up at number 1, could also wind up at number 3. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear from you. What do you think Indiana Jones is going to wind up doing at the end of the day? I think this movie is going to struggle its way to $300 million and probably not much beyond that, which makes the losses for Disney astronomical at that point, somewhere getting close to $250 to $300 million. We'll know more in a few weeks. But what do you think is going to win the weekend? Is it going to be The Sound of Freedom? Is it going to be Insidious, The Red Door? Or is it going to be old Indiana Jones? Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, and until next time, take care.